Exciting news, everyone. My new book, I Wish I'd Quit Sooner, is now available for pre-order. Visit my website at drlaura.live or check out the show notes to reserve your copy today. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Where Work Meets Life. I'm Dr. Laura today to share an episode with you on how to feel better, understanding our emotional palette to thrive in work and life with Dr. Shahana Alibhai. Shahana is a family physician and medical director of the Foundry Abbotsford. She's also a TEDx speaker and a best-selling author of the Mel Robbins endorsed book, Feel Better, which I'm holding up for those of you on YouTube. My copy, complete with sticky notes, because it is a fabulous book. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dr. Shahana Alibhai. I met her. I actually saw her on the stage at CPHR Alberta, which is a conference for the HR community in Alberta. It was in Edmonton last month, and I thought I need to talk to this doctor more because she has amazing things to say about emotions and how emotions can overtake us, but they can also be managed in a healthier way. And what really struck me about her is she's dedicated to helping youth. And I think we're in a mental health crisis when it comes to our youth, and there's a lot of work to be done there. So she helps them navigate their emotional well-being and helps adults, of course. And her book is powerful and full of practical exercises and activities. And she's been all over the place in terms of different media channels and outlets talking about this topic. She also mentors in the UBC Faculty of Medicine residency training program. I mean, the list goes on. She's a mover and a shaker. She has 3 young boys, and she's an incredible mother, an incredible entrepreneur, doctor, author, you name it. And she's incredible on the stage. Welcome, Dr. Shahana.
Oh, what a kind introduction. Thank you so much. I just hope my kids agree when you said that she's a good mom. Sometimes I feel like that whole laundry list of things, why is it that we focus on that more than anything? I think so interesting for parents who are listening, if you have a child or an adolescent in your life that you love, taking care of them is a full contact sport. I always say parenthood is a full contact sport, and it's one of the most humbling things as well. So it always brings us back to center
It
somehow.
is. And so my 3 are 15, 17, and 20. And how old are your boys?
6, 8, and 10.
Right. So we're essentially a decade apart in our journey.
That's
And
right.
I
That's
gotta
right. That's
say
right.
that so I have 2 boys and a daughter, but the boys, when they're that age, 6, 8, and 10, it's busy. I mean, it's busy times. They're energetic, aren't
It
they?
And busy with their fists, and they're right. They are just going at each other. They love each other one minute, and
Mhm.
they literally want to kill each other the next minute. So at one point, I thought, do I wear a whistle around my neck and act as a referee? Because that's what it felt like in the house constantly too. So it's a very interesting time. But thank goodness for hockey and sports and all the things, because that definitely keeps some of their energy bucketed
Yes.
towards their activities,
Yeah,
right?
and I
So,
find they get a little easier as they get into their teens, and then they actually are wonderful, beautiful humans to have conversations
th-
with. And it's wonderful how that changes. And then
there you
teenage girls
go.
are tricky, I must say, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
um,
Well, I've got about a decade to, I like that. I've got something to look forward to on the
you
other
do.
side. So that's
You
great.
do. So I'd like to know, beyond what I said in the intro, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing? So, what a typical week looks like in the world of Dr. Shahana?
Yeah, yeah. I think, everything that you said, there's always the shiny part of ourselves, right? The Mel Robbins endorse and the TEDx talk and all that is great. But I like to the thing that's not very shiny about me, the thing that's probably most authentic and that led to this journey was that I suffered with my own mental illness at the probably age of 4, 5, and 6. And at that time, this is 30 years ago now, undiagnosed, obviously untreated, silenced, suppressed, um, doing the best you can to figure it out. What it ended up being was a form of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is called pure OCD. not very well known even today, let alone 30 years ago. But the way it really manifested was postpartum OCD, perinatal OCD. But I bring up those words and those topics because it's actually quite common in the perinatal period. And second of all, sometimes we need language in order to understand what we're going through, because it's very easy to feel in this sea where you're completely alone and you don't feel like you actually belong. You feel like you're on an island. And that's how I lived a lot of my life. And we all have our coping mechanisms. Mine just happened to be socially acceptable coping mechanisms. That was just overworking. Medical school was the ultimate distraction, and it worked and it was socially acceptable. But I say that because one coping mechanism shouldn't trump the other, but it does in our society. But what I was looking for was acceptance, right? That's the same thing that my adolescents that I work with look for. When they come and they talk to me and they whisper these words of I did this, or I'm thinking of this, or this happened to me. There's that nanosecond response in between of almost as if they're toying with me, going, will you lean forward? Will you accept me in this moment despite I did this, or I'm thinking this, or I want to do this? Will you hold space for whatever this is? And nobody talked about that in medical school. Like, I don't have the same, amazing background and training that you do. In medical school, it's very illness focused, right? It's very, here's a disease, here's how you treat it. I call it a little bit, especially in the early parts of my career in family medicine, I called it fast food medicine. And I'm talking about my own experience where a patient would come in and you put a coin in and here's the requisition for an x-ray. You put a coin in and here's the prescription. It felt very transactional. But now, over a decade into my career, I find that the therapy, the idea of what I'm actually doing is holding space for what I crave the most, which was belonging, acceptance, mattering. And I could have only understood that because I've walked that road.
Mhm. Beautiful. So, I mean, your lived experience is such a huge part of
Yeah.
what you do,
Yeah.
and in your book, of course.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's hard. Like, offline, we were talking about the TEDx talk, and the first words I uttered in the TEDx talk was that I was a hypocrite, because I was. I was, and I mean that sincerely, because mental health was a you problem. I would help you. I would advocate for you. I would support you. I would counsel you. I'd prescribe for you. But when it came to me, no, insulated. I literally felt like I was insulated when in fact it was so porous. I could actually shatter at the most at the drop of a hat. And I think that's the misnomer. We think that the more education, the more prestige, the more professional, quote unquote, we are, the more bubble wrapped we are, when in fact we are probably even more susceptible because it takes us that much longer to ask for help.
I struggled with postpartum depression times 3, and as a psychologist, I didn't expect that that would hit me, and I felt that I should be able to figure it out and that I didn't need medication, and each postpartum depression got worse, and I just really empathize with anyone who's going through anxiety, depression, etc. It's brutal, and when you're a
Mhm.
psychologist, like, and you're a doctor, you feel almost ashamed, don't you?
Mhm. Oh, completely. I'll never read the comments of whatever you post online, but I made the mistake of reading one of the comments after my TEDx talk, and one of the comments read something to the fact that she's a doctor and it took her so long. How sad is that? And I'm putting words to what they're saying, but the way that I read it only filled me with more shame, going, yeah, I know it took me so long. And furthermore, I didn't even reach out to my own family doctor because at that time, my ego was inflated like a balloon. I called the anonymous physician helpline, hoping to circumvent this idea that anybody knows about it. Little would I know that, after 10 years after my birth of my first son, I would actually publish a book. Although the night before the book came out, I turned towards my husband and went, wait a second, other people are going to read that. So sometimes you have this moment of going, oh, shoot. But guess what? I tell this to my kids now, the world didn't implode. Nothing happened. It felt in myself that the secret was let out, that people are going to know the real me. But you know what? That's okay, because that actually explains why I want to keep doing this. And I think they always talk about your first book as being me search, right? You write your first book for you, and that's exactly what it was for me. The book I wish someone had given me 10 years ago, right? And I'm sure you feel the same way with your book coming out too.
I do. Yes, I do. And I'm holding up yours for those on YouTube. Feel better. And you can see all the colors on this umbrella. It's just beautiful. But tell us a little bit more about how the book has impacted people so far, what you're most proud of, and how people can get their hands on it.
Yeah, no, for sure. So it's available on Amazon. There's a Kindle and a Kobo edition. There's the Audible edition that I read out. If you don't mind my voice for another 4 hours, that's there as well. That was an interesting experience, but all available on Amazon. Proceeds go back to youth mental health. The whole idea is how can we keep this a full circle moment? So when I speak, when the book is sold, everything goes back to youth mental health, which is exactly why we're starting this conversation in the first place. But it's those people that will send me a message. I actually had somebody who is hospitalized in the psych ward in a distant hospital, and they wrote to me and said they picked up a copy of my book, and while they were an inpatient, they were going through it and doing their exercises, and they felt like a light bulb turned on. And that's the thing, you're never going to know what page, what phrase, what a story in there is going to impact someone. And yet it does. And we feel that same way. When I pick up a copy of any of these books, I am the worst. I don't ever read a book from start to finish. I'm a flipper. I'll flip through, I'll pick a page, go from here to there. But that's the power of putting your thoughts into words and hoping that that story might affect somebody too. So it's those types of statements that go, okay, because let's be honest, when you have the idea in your own head, I'm the first to put it down. Oh, that's too simple. That's not evidence-based enough.
Mhm.
People have already heard that. You know, we talk ourselves out constantly of sharing what's on our mind,
Mhm.
but it takes one person to go, that was not even new for me. That
Mhm.
impacted me. And it could be the
Yeah.
same message, but the way that you told it, that's what lands. So for all those
Yeah.
people who feel like they have a message, share it, even if it's out there in the
Mhm.
zeitgeist, because it's your frame on it that makes it unique.
And don't be a perfectionist because
Yeah.
nothing is ever perfect in this
Yes.
human experience.
Yes.
And if you're going to
Thank
be a
you.
perfectionist, then you won't get anything done. And
Oh,
guaranteed in Dr. Shahana's book, there's probably a mistake somewhere. And
oh,
in mine, my book is
100%.
here's her
Oh,
book beside my book on YouTube. They're the same
love it.
size and both
Love it.
very, you can see the colors complement each other.
Yeah, they
So
do.
mine's
They
coming out
do.
January 13th. So
Oh,
excited about that. But I think what our two books have in common, I mean, mine's about toxic bosses, which completely impacts people's emotions in a negative way.
mhm.
But both of our books are meant to make a difference, and both are really practical and full of strategies and exercises and activities and
Yeah. Yeah.
stories for sure. Mine have stories from my research participants across North America and my own stories in there too.
Exactly. That's what you walk away from a keynote. I'll rarely remember a statistic. I will always remember, oh, that's that story that they created. And you can even feel it when you're a speaker. People start to automatically lean
Mhm.
forward a little bit when you engage in storytelling. And I think, especially in this world of AI and not knowing what's true and what's false, I think there is something to be said about the art of storytelling. It's what's captured us from time and millennia, right? Having an amazing story or video or TV or movie. This is what brings us together as well. So I think I was always worried the book wasn't academic enough. I remember getting asked, is it for, I said, no, it's not for academics. It's for everybody. Right. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that inclusivity is really important.
Same here. I was, oh,
Yeah.
should I have more
There you go.
citations?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you need enough, but come on. Like it's about the stories, it's about the experience. You have a lot of lived experience and medical experience. I have a lot of both as well. Mine's not medical, but it's certainly um, my experience is from the world of psychology and working with organizations and humans going through all these difficult situations. And speaking of difficult situations, what trends are you seeing out there when it comes to people's mental health and young people and adults today?
I I think of it as a pendulum in some ways, and if you are like me and still reading fairy tales to your kids, it's very much like the Goldilocks phenomenon. Our mental health is like the prototypical bowl of porridge that Goldilocks wanted. It can't be too cold, it can't be too warm, it has to be just right. And it's this idea that the absence of distress, if I feel anything distressful, then my mental health must be bad. And therefore, even to take it one step further, I must medicate it, right? So that is that lineage of thought as well. So sometimes I'll have people saying, I feel anxious, therefore give me the pill. Well, if you feel anxious, or are you anxious, or do you have an anxiety disorder? Those are three very, of course, I'm talking to the expert here, very, very, very different things. What I am very happy about is at least we are talking about it. At least we
Mhm.
are not like when I was younger, hiding in the shadows and feeling that I could only portray something as a problem if it had to do with my physical health. But working with adolescents, I want them to lean into distress, not in a bad way, in a way that that's what's going to build your resiliency and your grit. And what lessons can you learn from it? I think what's made harder is, how do you have an adolescent go through distress without the sounding board of a trusted adult? Then you have the guardrails are gone. They've fallen away because usually trust, and I'm not talking about parents, it could be a teacher, it could be a coach, it could be a aunt or an uncle. But if you don't have those guardrails of trusted adults that you can actually fall back upon, therein lies the issue. And I think therein we go into other coping mechanisms that we all see so well in our adolescence, whether it be vaping or cannabis or alcohol or any of the other things as well. But a phrase that comes to mind that adolescents really resonate with is that, is your coping mechanism, is the way that you regulate, does it come as a friend and leave as a friend? Or does it come as a friend and leave as an enemy? And I don't need to say anything more. They get it. They get it. Texting a friend, going for a walk, listening to some music comes as a friend, leaves as a friend, no problem. No, not financial cost, mental, emotional, physical cost. Cannabis, vaping, substances, alcohol, list goes on and on, comes as a friend. Of course, it works. It works. Oftentimes leaves as an enemy. It takes more from you than you want. And they'll be the first to say, oh, yeah, I get what you're talking. I think adolescents are brutally honest, very smart. They don't mince words, that's for sure. And they operate in analogies, just very much. That's how my brain works as well. And I think maybe that's why we get along so well too, at least for the most part. So I think those are some of the, whether it be trends or just some of the things that I'm seeing right now, patterns, definitely in practice.
And when you keynoted at the HR conference, you said that leaves as an enemy, comes as a
Yeah,
friend, leaves, and that
yeah,
really stuck with me. I wrote
yeah.
that down, and we're
Oh,
going to
perfect.
get that in our show notes, and we're going to get out on socials, because I think that's an important thing to remember, right? And having a few glasses of wine or whatever feels really good. Maybe not the next day. And as I get older, the wine is impacting my sleep, and a bad sleep means a bad day. So.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's so interesting too. I call it the regulation menu for parents too. And that's going to change. Like my 6, my 8, my 10-year-old, of course, as they go through adolescence, how they regulate their emotions, just like us, is constantly changing. I never want parents, though, to miss an opportunity of when you are feeling stressed or overwhelmed or irritable. Like sometimes we feel like we have to hide everything inside of us and just present the best to our kids. Why not tell your kids, this is how mom is feeling, this is how dad is feeling? I was late for this podcast recording because I had to drop the kids because they were all running late for school. And I found myself, I could feel my heart beating up into my chest as I was trying to make it back. And I told them, I said, Mommy's feeling really stressed right now. Let's put on some music, let's do this thing. And I think the idea, we've heard modeling a lot, but I think don't waste an opportunity where you can say, this is actually how I'm feeling, and this is one way to get out of it.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, you're spot on. And I try to
Yeah,
be open about that as well with my
yeah,
kids.
yeah.
And so the science of emotions, let's talk a
Mhm.
little bit about what people least understand when it comes to the science of emotions. And I know you have a chapter on that, but just,
Yeah. Oh, of
briefly,
course.
what do you want to share with us on that?
One of the biggest things is that emotions are good or bad. I grew up in a household where boredom, feeling down, depressed, feeling anxious, like we're all bad, considered sins or bad words. Like especially boredom. That was the B word. Like, do not say that you're bored. You have to feel you find making happy and joyful. And I honestly felt that if I felt even anything towards the semblance of anger, that meant that I was a bad person. So in the book, it's very clearly laid out. There is no such thing as a good or bad emotion. I call it comfortable and uncomfortable. Right. In fact, to be honest, some people might not find anger such an uncomfortable emotion because it's a familiar emotion. That's what I call your emotional bed. That when you have hit your level of distress, you have a default emotional setting that your brain is wired to go to. Don't pass go, don't collect $200. You go right there. And for me, it's overwhelm. Doesn't matter what's happening, I will lay in my bed of overwhelm. And it's so familiar to me that it's not that uncomfortable. It's actually very comfortable. But I didn't even know I was doing it before I wrote the book. So there's no such thing as a good or bad emotion. Having language to describe your emotions is so incredibly powerful, because do you feel bored or do you actually feel something else? Like, what is the actual words? A great hot tip is the app How We Feel. I have no affiliation with it whatsoever. I just think it's a great app by Dr. Mark at Stanford University. He's created that. It's totally free and it maps emotions as an energy valence, high or low, and then your emotional valence, whether you feel, euthymic or you feel a bit more distressed. And then it gives you all of these bubbles of words so you can pick things appropriately as well. I think we often think, though, that emotions are cumbersome, that we just have to stumble through them. But what if they were clues? What if they actually helped direct our attention to what we want to approach or what we want to avoid? And more importantly, what if they helped us understand what we valued? Like, that is the key. Why do some of us have an emotional reaction over one thing and others have zero emotional reaction? Use that as data. And I, for one, didn't realize the immense amount of data that I was leaving at the door, not understanding my emotions.
Beautiful. And I just, again, I love your cover, and I like the title of our episode about the emotional palette. And emotions are all different colors, shapes, and sizes, and they are clues to what we might want to do next, or what we might want to do to bring ourselves to a healthier emotion or a different emotion, or just ride the emotion and feel the emotion to help us release it, right? Because sometimes we have to go through it, whether it's the tears or the frustration or whatever, so that it dissipates, right?
Of course, and I think I was the queen at circumventing. I can just go around the block. I can just take the roundabout around. All you end up doing is going around and around the emotion, never through it too. So allowing yourself, and that's where the 3 S's, which are described in the book, I do this to this day when I don't, and it's okay not to know how you feel. I think a lot of the times people are like, I don't even know. I said, I know that was me and is me a lot of the times. So writing the 3 S's of do you have any sensation in your body? If you don't, that's okay, but pay attention to that. For example, in the car ride this morning, I was certainly having a sensation in my body with the heaviness in my chest and the shortness of breath and the sweaty palms. What was the story you're telling yourself in your head? For me, if I was going to be late to this podcast, I didn't want to let you and your team down. I value being on time. I didn't want to keep people waiting. And the third one is significance. Why does this matter to you? And I alluded to that as well. If I didn't care about keeping people waiting, I'd be just meandering my way over. But to me, when you've made a commitment, you show up, right? So that was the other thing: significance, sensation, and story. And I always talk about emotions just don't, I wish you could twitch your nose like Bewitched and they would just suddenly disappear. That would be lovely. But I think you soften your emotions, you soften them over time. And each of those S's, to me, take that big firm block of butter and gradually, gradually, gradually melt it down, right?
What a great analogy. I am a huge fan of analogies, so
Yes.
thank you. So, what are maybe 3 quick takeaways from the book that people could apply immediately? What takeaways are people resonating with in Feel Better?
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. I think, we've talked about this idea of no good or bad emotion. I do want to just fast forward to one thing as well. which is that one of the key things, and we talk about this in the book, is this idea of the stress equation, right? This idea of what you think you want to happen, what actually happens, and the result. So that gap, if you take nothing else away from that, realize that you are going through your day with an expected level of this is what's going to happen. I'm going to be on time for this meeting. My boss is going to reply to me nicely when I hand in this report. And it's fine. It's good to have a level of expectation. But if it falls below that, you perceive that as stress. So stress is when things are not going according to your plan. That's how usually we perceive that. So one of the things is you can't often change the what happens. You get stuck in traffic, your colleague says something to you, but you have the lever of how are you going to react to that? And that brings me to the second lesson of the book. How you react to that, especially with another person, is understanding their invisible chalkboard, which to me has been one of the most formative visual lessons that I've learned and taken away from the book and into clinical practice. And that lesson is that every single person has a chalkboard floating on their forehead. And that chalkboard tells you everything you really need to know. What's happening in their marriage, what's happening with their kids, what's happening with their health. I alluded to parts of my invisible chalkboard right at the top of the show, telling you about the pure OCD, telling you about the struggles that I've had, because hopefully then the beautiful mess effect kicks in. That when you share something vulnerable, authentic, and truthful, you know, like, and trust that person more, not less. And I think that's what's missing in society. We keep circling the drain around this issue of authenticity and vulnerability, but it's the first thing I want to see in you, and it's the last thing I want you to see in me, right?
Hmm.
It's the last thing I want you to see in me, but I want to see that in you because I want to lean into that conversation. So if I'm a very visual person, as you can tell, so picturing that invisible chalkboard, if someone, I was parked in this parking stall the other day and I did a fine job parking and someone parked right next to me and the stalls were really tight and the woman just looked at me and I thought, what did I do wrong? So I opened my window and said, is everything okay? And she just huffed at me and she couldn't open her door because it's not my fault the parking stalls were small. I just felt this sense of outrage, to be honest. I'm like, why would you do that to it's just someone that you don't even know, just treat them so badly. But that's where the phrase, it's an explanation, not an excuse. I don't know what happened in her day. It's never an excuse for bad behavior, don't get me wrong, but maybe something on her invisible chalkboard is rubbing her the wrong way. It's an explanation, not an excuse. And it's not for her, it's for me. It helped me get on with my day because that's what the book is for. It's to help you get on with your day, right? And the last but not least, I just really want to reiterate those. It's all about the 3 S's in the book. And the most important S to me is the story. Capture the story going on in your head. If I had a phrase, self-care is the story that you sell yourself. It's not bubble baths. It's not going for a walk. Those will quiet the story. But you really want to practice self-care? You're not just telling yourself that story. You are selling yourself that story right now. I should be. I have to. I never get to. I always screw up. And I think the advantage that our careers have is that we hear that story is actually ubiquitous amongst everybody. We all are telling ourselves this stuff, except no one talks to each other about it, right?
Hmm.
So realizing that you're not alone in that tape of putting ourselves down because we're much better at doing that than lifting ourselves back up.
We sure are. We are so hard on ourselves. And
Mhm.
often with my clients, I say, you have someone on your shoulder and it's this voice that's a negative voice. And we usually name it. So we think of maybe someone who bullied them in school, someone they didn't like. And then we name that thing because it's a critter. And if we had a friend who talked to ourselves like that would be an enemy, wouldn't it? Because it's
Yeah. Oh my
horrible.
goodness. Exactly. And it goes back to like, I think there's that sound belief. I know it was for me that if I just keep that self-flagellating, working too hard, pushing myself, and it works to a point. Once again, it's that friend and enemy thing. It does work, but only to a point, right? And you'll find that the work of Dr. Kristen Neff and self-compassion, that is such a paradigm shift, but therein lies the longevity of how do you speak to yourself a little bit more kindly, feeling that common connection and that common humanity and realizing that the moment that you're going through is the moment, but it's not forever.
Exactly, which brings me to a quote of yours, Dr. Shahana. I think you're so amazing. So, this quote made it into the Oscars, and the quote is, "We do not suffer from a lack of joy, simply a lack of recognizing it." Tell us how this quote came and what
Yeah,
it
yeah.
means.
Yeah, it came from my dark times. That's exactly how it came. Like you said, even a couple of years ago, parenting the boys was really, really challenging. And I'll be fully transparent. I would find myself wanting to stay longer at work because coming home, it felt like a version of myself that I didn't like. And I felt like I was constantly putting out fires. And I had to really figure out a way to stretch joy. And I want you to think about the times if your kids have ever done that, chewed a piece of chewing gum, taken it out of their mouth, and then stretched it really long. I know most kids love to do that. My kid did that once and then stuck it in his hair. Definitely don't do that. That's not a good idea. But that's what we need to do with our joy. And sometimes, just like stretched out gum, it's going to have those threads and it's going to be pulled apart and it's not going to be all pretty and nice. But when you do get that glimpse of joy, how do you make it last longer? And the idea that I give is that when your kids wash their hair and you're giving them a cuddle and you smell their hair after they've had a bath, like that little moment, moment might be 5 seconds, but in your mind, how can you pay attention to it such that that lasts much, much longer? And you do that through the five senses. Stopping that moment in time, smelling their hair, feeling the sensation of their warm body, whatever the case might be. And that analogy of stretching moments of joy helped me realize that the moments of joy are there. They're just sprinkled like little tiny bits of confetti that I miss. I miss them because they're so small. Because the moments of pain and shouting and breaking up fights are like these boulder bricks that are just weighing so heavily on me that if the joy is falling from the sky, to me, it's microscopic. So I had to figure out a way to stretch it.
Beautiful. So, how did that quote come into the Oscars? Tell us that part.
Oh, yeah. So that was part of a planner that was sent out. Well, not sent out, it was handed out to the stars at the red carpet as well. And that was a quote within that planner as well, too. And it has a little QR code where they can go and I do a video for them. If I don't know if the stars want to actually do that, who knows? But at least the quote is in there. So,
That's beautiful. Yeah,
yeah.
just so powerful.
Oh, thank
Now, I'm
you.
going to ask how you take care of your own work life wellness. So, what does work life wellness look like for you? You have a busy household, three young boys, you have a medical practice, you're an author, you're a speaker. So, how do you maintain your own work life balance, Dr. Shahana?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I say by coloring outside the lines and go with me for a second too. As a physician, most people would expect that I'm in the clinic 5 days a week or 4 days a week for at least 6 to 8 hours. That would be normal. I'm not. Clinical practice for me is about 3 days and not 5 days, right? And usually it's in 4 hour or 6 hour chunks. So I've had to say to condense that part of my practice. I'm still in there, still working, but to open up speaking and writing and traveling is my way of therapy. I'll be honest. It allows me to think and write and be creative and make mistakes. In medicine, there is zero margin for making a mistake. Speaking, I can make a mistake. Doing a podcast, I can say something, go, shoot, I should have said it this way. But it's allowed me to color outside the line. So by being unconventional, it's not like I'm working 60 hours in a clinic and writing and speaking. I'm saying no to certain things so I can say yes to some of the things that matter. I think that's the fallacy when people see a bio like myself, they're like, well, you have it all together. Actually, I'm saying no to a lot of things to say yes to what really matters to me. And do I get flack for it? Absolutely. People will tell me you should just be in the clinic. I've had people say you shouldn't be a speaker. You're a doctor. You're not a speaker, right? You all of these things, and you go, thank you, and this is what I choose to do, right?
Mhm.
We get you're just a family doctor. Oh, you're just a family doctor. I get that all the time,
Just,
right?
I think, is a swear word. I don't like the word just.
Exactly. And I lived in that. I was going to apply to a specialty program, not because I wanted to go into the specialty, just because I wanted acceptance, right?
Hmm.
And that would have been a miserable 5 years of existence. So a lot of the times, can you stand on your own 2 feet and say, this is what brings me joy? And I don't need it to bring you joy, but it brings me joy.
Yes. I love that for you. And I'm the same. I've never fit into one category or
Mm,
box. And people love to categorize and judge.
yeah.
They like to
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
okay, you're an MD. Okay, what are you? What are you? And they find
Hmm.
people like us are just so multifaceted and
Yeah. Yeah.
serial
Yes.
entrepreneurs are so hard to nail down for people. So
Exactly, exactly. And then yeah, you wear the mom title and the wife title, but then what? Yeah, I even tell the kids, I'm like, nobody called me to speak. I had to call them for many years. So what is it going to look like? People just think that this happens. I would cold call companies in between patients and say, "Do you need a speaker?" And they're like, "Aren't you supposed to be seeing patients right now?" But I knew there was something about speaking that I just couldn't get enough of. And yes, it took a lot of practice as well. So go chase your dreams, shoot your shot, whatever, just, whatever that happens to be for you, your message is worth hearing.
absolutely. So my final question that I ask
Mhm.
all guests is what is one wish for a better world? And in your case, when it comes to people feeling better, what's your one wish?
Mm. That everybody has a sounding board that they can go to, that they can feel like they can be their complete self with, that they feel like, especially for my adolescents, they can go to that person, feel like they belong, feel like they matter, and feel like they can make a positive impact in this world. It's when their voice isn't heard, when they don't have that sounding board, that's when I really start to worry as well too. So I know I wanted that, and I think I have that now, and I hopefully I can be that for other people.
And you absolutely are. So it's
Mm.
been an honor and a delight to be
Thank
on
you.
this podcast episode with you on how to feel better, understanding our emotional palette to thrive in work and life. I highly recommend this book. I think it's a real gem, and I actually think I'm going to gift it to people in my life.
Thank
And
you.
I
Thank
also
you.
think we had a loss in our family, and I think the grief process, the book can help with grief as well.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's the best
So
compliment you could give me. Thank you so much.
it's a hugely valuable book. And thank you for being who you are, a shining light in a tricky but beautiful world.
Thank you.
So I hope you stay well. And everyone listening or viewing, I hope that you feel better because life is a palette of different emotions. But let's not forget to stretch out the joy like the piece of gum, stretch out those moments of joy in our lives. Thank you for tuning in to Where Work Meets Life. If you found this content valuable, please rate, review, and share with others who may benefit. If you're struggling in your work life and need support, I offer coaching sessions. You can book a complimentary consult on my website. I'm also a passionate keynote speaker and would love to discuss your professional speaking needs. Visit my website, drlaura.live, to sign up for my monthly e-newsletter filled with tips and resources to help you stay well.